Hi, I'm Ryan McNamara with Maroon TV. I'm here with Jake Mansoor. He's running for president with the Open Mind slate at U Chicago. So Jake, just to start things off, tell me a little bit about your platform.
So our platform is divided into three main policy areas. The first is building a more inclusive community, and that focuses on a renewed commitment to helping victims of sexual assault and really emphasizing prevention as far as education of undergrads goes, and that starts during O Week and sort of continues throughout the entire undergrad process. We think that it's important for undergrads to be reminded of what constitutes sexual assault and really the best ways of preventing sexual assault. So, and then other parts of that platform include a more inclusive campus for RSOs. We feel that RSOs need more of a political voice on campus, and one of our solutions for that is the institution of an RSO Congress, which would be a gathering of all the leaders of all the RSOs, where they could initiate collaborations, discuss problem solving, and it would have a component of sort of highlighting the 10 RSOs a year that have done really outstanding things on this campus. Individuals do amazing things, but so do RSOs. And so we want a place where those can be highlighted, so other RSOs can really see what others have done successfully. For example, in increasing membership, broadening diversity, winning competitions, that sort of thing. And then the other component of the RSO Congress would be every single RSO leader would have a vote in electing a student ombudsperson, whose role it would be to sort of be an oversight mechanism on student government. As you know, student government doles out a lot of funds in the six-figure range to RSOs, and we just feel that the allocations process is not nearly formulaic enough, and oftentimes that means friends get preferential treatment, or groups get preferential treatment based on like political reasons. And so we feel that there needs to be a person whose role it is specifically to keep an eye on the student government. And so as you Chicago students, we're all very busy. We don't have ample time to read every single meeting minutes of student government and really go to every town hall. So this person's job would be to do those things and to keep RSO leaders informed of student government activities, anything suspicious, and anybody on campus would have that person as a resource to discuss. It would be a third-party resource for people to discuss issues they have if they think officers are not following the bylaws or they think student government has ceased to act in the interest of the student body. And so that's the first component of our platform. There's many other ideas that are included under that. Right. And then the other two policy areas we focus on are campus life improvements and university transparency and student government accountability. So as far as university transparency goes, and stop me if I'm like talking too much, sure. University transparency, we're very, very excited about an open data policy. And we have, as our director of technology, Emma Smith, she crafted the open data policy for the city of New York. She's worked for the de Blasio and Obama campaigns on data, and she's a real pro at this. And so with her help, we have a very clear vision as far as what we want a university open data policy to look like. This would be a sort of online hub for information on shuttle swipes, reg swipes, UCPD stops and arrests, energy and sustainability data on energy consumption of buildings. That one's a little tougher, but we really think this is very feasible and would lead to greater transparency on the university level and also spur innovation on the student and graduate student level, with individuals being able and groups being able to utilize this abundance of data on making the university a better place and coming up with really helpful resources for students. For example, can I graduate? which basically tells you, you input your information and you can see whether or not you can graduate from a school. So things like that. And you know, Berkeley has these programs, Yale has these programs, and it's just a matter of aggregating this data into one central place and having a uniform licensing policy for that data, because as it is now, it's just a hodgepodge of different sites where this is available, and a lot of this information isn't available at all, and all of them have different use policies that pertain to them. So organizing this mess into one open data hub, we think would really be a way forward for UCPD transparency, university transparency, and a real step forward for innovation on campus.
And going back right quick to something you mentioned about your interests in, you know, helping sexual assault advocacy and education and whatnot. You mentioned education. And how that's something that continues throughout the entire undergraduate process. How would you go about, you know, what kind of programs would you institute to help, you know, keep students educated throughout their time? I don't know if you have any sort of plans that you guys have thought of, or, you know, what specifically?
Yeah, absolutely, we do. So first of all, we think that the house meetings during a week should be mandatory. As of now, they're not. They should be mandatory, and that's a simple solution to if you have a program sort of detailing prevention and explaining what constitutes sexual assault on campus. If you just have a closed audience, that's much better. You get a higher number of people that you reach. Also, second years most of the time choose to stay in housing, or a high percentage of second years choose to stay in housing, and so the house system is a good way to provide that continuing education for undergrads. As far as third years and fourth years, we're looking into holding meetings for them in the beginning of the year. Fourth years, ideally, when we institute a stricter sort of policy on sexual assault education, fourth years would ideally be well equipped to handle these situations. It's also a lot it's also a lot more difficult to capture their attention, because they're living in other places, but we also envision sort of that continuing education taking place in the individual groups that students are involved in. For example, on academic teams, as of now, there's no policy for occurrences of sexual assault on trips with academic teams. And so this is a very serious issue. You know, what are the means of recourse for students on these trips? I'm in Model UN, and so we had our conference this two or three weekends ago, and we had a briefing by the Center for Leadership and Involvement. And as part of that briefing, you know, they told us, don't drink, don't bring drugs, you know, all that good stuff. But there was no mention about sexual assault. You know, you have more than 100 students staying downtown at the Palmer House with, you know, other college students and just random hotel guests and high school students. And so there's a lot of issues involved there with students in close proximity there are substances available in that setting. And so that's all the more reason that academic teams need to be educated on the proper procedure for handling these cases of sexual assault occurring off campus. And so we want to explore a strict policy with the academic teams. In partnership with them, we would develop this for determining what are the, you know, how do you educate students on the resources that are available in the current setting, and also back at the university, give them the numbers of the SADOC, the Sexual Assault Dean on Call, and just provide them with the resources. They need to be safe, and just a reiteration of how crucial it is to stress prevention, and this would focus on education and partnering with them to craft a policy. So those are our ideas for that.
Yeah. Another quick thing on that, you mentioned the house system is a good way to keep second years educated. How do you ensure that, you know, more specifically second year students, but I guess all students, you know, really are shown, you know, I'm sorry, I'm kind of like, how do you ensure that these students are able to, you know, really get the message from their house? You know, you can say there are mandatory house meetings, but house meetings really aren't mandatory. Right. You know, how do you ensure that the house system is a way to keep sexual assault education going? Right.
I think student panels are a good opportunity for that, and I also think, you know, house meetings are not mandatory, and I think if the RAs, the RHs stipulated that whether it's during O week, whether it's during first week, whether it's during some other point in the quarter, that this particular house meeting is mandatory. Mm-hmm. And this is the issue that we will be focusing on. Attendance could be taken. You know, we could explore other possibilities as far as, you know, a carrot, not just only a stick, right? You know, instead of in addition to mandatory attendance. But we think that this issue will be taken seriously by the students still in housing, and I think that they would understand that the gravity of this issue merits a mandatory 30 to 40 minute house meeting.
Mm-hmm. And shifting gears a little bit to RSOs, I'm really curious about your RSO Congress, and I guess how you're going to go about implementing mm-hmm. that, you know, ensuring that all RSOs are all involved mm-hmm. in said Congress, and that, you know, regardless of your size, they have an equal voice, and that their opinions are all, you know, shared and taken into consideration.
Right. Yeah. So obviously we have around 400 to 500 RSOs on campus, so it's going to be really exciting getting them all into a room, and I think the opportunity to give them some real political power will be that draw that brings them into the room. Also, there's no real opportunity when the leaders of the RSOs can come together, meet one another in a very substantive way, focused on sort of initiating collaborations and inter-RSO cooperation. So I think that will be a draw in itself. But additionally, I think that... So wait, can you repeat your question?
Yeah, I'm just curious about how you're going to get everyone right. there and make sure it's all, you know, a fair community, regardless
right.
of whether you're a large, well-established RSO or one of the smaller, you know, RSOs that's growing and is still, you know, trying to get their foot in the door,
right.
like Maroon TV, actually.
Right, exactly. Well, so each RSO would have one person, so whether that's you or whether that's Mike, whether, you know, whoever it is, that would be one person representing their RSO. Come to the meeting, and I think there would be interest in that. You know, you want to meet other RSOs, let them know what you're about. It's a great way to just get your name out there, just in general. And then because there are so many, we envision it taking place. These are like the logistics of it, right? So taking place in, for example, Mandel Hall or Hutch or Kent 107, and part of the meeting would be, you know, breaking into working groups, for example, like focused on different policy areas. So, for example, the allocations process, collaborations, and, you know, a committee structure would probably be the best sort of structure to organize these things, just by virtue of the large number of RSOs that we have on campus. I think that we could get the Center for Leadership and Involvement's help in coordinating this effort. They're a real asset for us, and I don't think student government uses them to nearly the degree to which they could help us.
I'm curious about your slate's opinion on RSO funding, especially, again, for smaller groups. Again, it's really hard to get funding sometimes if you're a smaller group. When you're fundraising, a lot of times smaller groups will have to use their own money. How do you help these, you know, growing RSOs that don't have, you know, the resources or allocations that other groups have?
Right. Could I get some water? Would that be possible? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we don't believe that the allocations process right now is nearly as transparent or formulaic that it could be. Mm-hmm. I sit on the annual allocations committee, as well as my running mate, Asya Akcha, who's our VP for administration, and that process is gearing up right now. And we've talked to tons of RSOs on this campus and student leaders on this campus, and everybody has a problem with the allocations process, whether that's just the initial stages or the appeals process. Nobody really feels that nobody has the sense that it's a very fair sort of process, determined based upon objective measures of merit for funding. We want to make the process more formulaic, more accountable, and more transparent, and that goes to sort of establishing benchmarks as far as like what would determine funding. So, for example, the number of members, or establishing what value would you bring back to campus if we gave you these funds to travel, right? So it's like, if you're bringing back value to campus, why shouldn't you get these funds? And I think that these sort of experiences should be prioritized, or at least equally prioritized, as much as allocating funds for food, for example. There was a recent Maroon article that was pretty good, regarding how student government tries to really advocate that students spend money on food. And it's just a mystery to me why we're prioritizing RSOs spend money on food when they're more than capable of deciding what they want to spend their money on. Every group that I've talked to, when they've gone into SGFC or the annual allocations process, they get less than half or nothing of what they requested for travel. And we feel that this is an easy problem to solve by making the process more dependent on objective measures of the quality of funding proposals, and the number of people that an event would benefit or that travel would benefit. We can I think make a difference on that front.
Cool. Well, unfortunately, Jake, I think that's all we have time for, but I really appreciate you coming by, and best of luck in the upcoming election.
Thank you so much for having us, Ryan. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today.
Our pleasure. Thanks, Jake.
Thank you.